Hey creepers, welcome to the Mrs. Night Terror channel. Join me as I tell you spooky, shocking, and scary bedtime tales. But don't worry too much about them coming true. Each story I tell is a fictional narrative. If you think you can handle it, listen closely and imagine yourself being part of each and every story I tell. I want to say thank you to each and every creeper out there. This is the first episode of my scary story series, and surely not the last. If you enjoy what you hear, give me a follow on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Mrs. Night Terror. Leave a comment below to let me know what you want to hear next. Today I have a truly terrifying story that'll send shivers down your spine. So grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let's get started with this not-so-true crime tale. Tonight's tale is called What Did Johnny Do? The midnight air was cold. An icy shroud blanketed the world in darkness. Johnny walked with purpose, his distorted footsteps muffled by the weight of his distressed thoughts. The eerie silence was disrupted only by the rhythmic pulse of vibrations blasting through his headphones. Each angled step took him further from the life he once knew, a life tainted by his own obsessive actions. His thoughts were blurred, and his motions were repeating. He was on autopilot, walking for what seemed to be an eternity. Any outsider looking in wouldn't notice anything odd or peculiar, as he looked like a regular man simply walking down the dark street. But the story of Johnny was anything but regular, and his reasons for wandering alone in the darkness weren't simple at all. As the hours passed, Johnny's path became a twisted labyrinth of streetlights and stop signs, a haunting reminder of the choices he had made just hours earlier. He walked at a steady pace, with a sense of urgency, his heart heavy with the feeling that his time was running out. The night seemed to stretch on indefinitely. It felt as if days had passed in only a few hours. His memories were fading in and out, a canvas painted with regrets and secrets. He wandered aimlessly until the sun began to rise. Beautiful colors danced on the horizon, illuminating the world around him. He could no longer hide in the shadows. Speeding past the streetlights and lurking within the corners of the dark world, Johnny knew that daybreak would change his life forever. The sun's first timid rays began to breach the horizon, casting a feeble light upon Johnny's weary figure. He knew his escape was temporary, that the reality of the world would catch up to him soon. His mind raced, searching for a way out, a chance at redemption, a way to escape the dark web that he had woven. But reason and logic were not part of his consciousness. He simply couldn't form a full thought or a collective understanding of what to do next. All he could do was walk. His pace became slower as the sun grew higher in the sky. His knees became weaker as his mind was starting to clear. Memories were becoming more vivid, and tears began to fall out of Johnny's dry, bloodshot eyes. And then, in an instant, the police arrived. They slowly pulled their vehicle next to Johnny as he walked. His head faced forward while noise blasted in his headphones. He was unaware of their presence until they drove ahead of him, gaining his attention. Their flashing lights and stern voices shattered the fragile cocoon of Johnny's thoughts. Johnny removed his headphones. The officer's questions pierced the silence, demanding answers that Johnny wasn't sure he was ready to give. He stood at a crossroads, his heart pounding, his fate hanging in the balance. Facing the officers, Johnny had a choice to make. He knew that resistance would only lead to more pain and more suffering. He was tired of running, tired of the guilt that had weighed down on him for too long. He chose to surrender, to face the consequences of his actions, and to embrace the chance at a new beginning. He lowered his body to the ground, falling to his knees, his last act of mercy, looking up to the heavens as the arresting officers placed handcuffs on his wrists. As Johnny sat in the back of the police car, the weight of his decision settled upon him. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. They talked amongst themselves. Johnny could hear the muffled words, but couldn't comprehend any of their discussions. One officer looked back at Johnny, asking him a question. Johnny wasn't ready to speak. He wasn't even ready to listen. The officer's words sounded like noise, unintelligible noise that Johnny couldn't understand. He lowered his head, ignoring the questions. He had nothing to say. At least, not yet. The station loomed ahead, a place where truths would be unearthed, and Johnny's past would collide with his present. They pulled into a parking space designated for the arrival of those who were detained on suspicious criminal acts. As Johnny got out of the back seat of the car, he felt cold. A shiver went down his spine. He began to cry. This was his new reality. The officers knew they had their guy. There was no doubt. The blood on Johnny's boots and the deep wounds on his forearms told a story, and the officers knew they needed a way to get to the bottom of it. They walked him to the jail and placed Johnny had never been before. He had never committed a crime. He had never even gotten a speeding ticket. He was a model citizen for 39 years. This world was foreign to him, and he felt hopeless. In the interrogation room, Johnny's gaze was fixed on the table before him. The officers attempted to create an atmosphere of comfort, hoping to coax the truth out of him. They could see his discomfort and knew it would take some time. They talked with detectives, creating a game plan for what was to come next. They didn't want to scare him or deter him from opening up. They could see that he was already dissociated from here and now, and they wanted to get him back into reality. They saw Johnny shiver, so they offered him a blanket to warm him up. His glazed eyes pierced through the officer as he wrapped the blanket around Johnny's shoulders, but his silence continued. The officers brought in one of their finest negotiators. She was soft-spoken and compassionate. They knew that she would be the one to get Johnny to open up. And within 30 minutes, Johnny spoke his first words. Johnny looked deep into the negotiator's eyes and said, "I'm sorry." They knew it was a start. Remorse was a telltale sign that he wanted to talk. They needed to make him more comfortable, so they offered him something to drink, and a chilling smile danced across Johnny's lips. "Water," was his only request. An ice-cold glass of water was what Johnny wanted, and that's what they gave him. The officers placed the water in front of Johnny and began to ask him questions about the previous night. The room grew tense as he began to sway from side to side, humming an odd noise that didn't sound familiar to their ears. His demeanor changed. It was like night and day. The once cold and silent Johnny was now an enlightened spirit. The officers asked Johnny what he was doing and what he was humming. At this point, he no longer had his headphones or any of his belongings. The room was silent, other than the chatter of the detectives. Johnny asked the officer to retrieve his phone so that he could let them hear what he was humming. The officer was combative, refusing to allow Johnny access to items that were now marked as evidence, but his partner agreed to allow him this one favor and gathered the phone. The officer wanted to make Johnny feel like a friend who does favors, and friends do favors for other friends. He reminded Johnny that allowing him to have this phone meant that Johnny had to answer more questions. And now talkative Johnny smiled and agreed. "Of course, officer. I'll tell you everything you want." They brought in the bag that contained the items that Johnny had when he was brought in. They handed him his phone. Johnny asked for a charger because his phone was dead. The officers were apprehensive, but handed him one anyway. As he plugged in his phone, his fingers brushed against the prong of the cube. He placed his other hand into his glass of water. The crackling sound that followed was loud. The room was enveloped in a sickening odor. The lights flickered, and Johnny's lifeless body lay sprawled onto the floor, the phone emitting a haunting static. The officers yelled and rushed to aid Johnny, trying to revive him. But it was too late. Johnny was gone. One officer grabbed Johnny's phone, the phone that was not even dead at all. With much battery life, he opened the phone and looked at his recent apps. The officer's shock turned to horror as they realized the true nature of what Johnny had been humming. What he had been listening to with his earbuds all night as he walked the city's dark alleys. It was a gruesome symphony of pain, suffering, a recording of his own family's final moments. Screams, moans, and agonizing yells could be heard. Loud pops, bangs, and other ominous noises filled the room. The officers couldn't bear to hear anymore. They stood in silence as they wondered what had happened in their final moments. In the wake of Johnny's shocking demise, the room was filled with an eerie stillness. The officers exchanged bewildered glances, grappling with the realization that the darkness that had consumed Johnny ran deeper than anybody could have ever imagined. The truth remained locked within the confines of his mind, a secret that would forever haunt the corridors of their memories. And so, as the questions remained unanswered and the chaos of Johnny's actions echoed through the walls, a chilling question lingered in the air. What had he done? What exactly did Johnny do? As we draw the curtains on this chilling tale, our hearts still racing and our minds haunted by the echoes of the unknown, remember that the darkness we've explored is a bit of a glimpse into the abyss that dwells within us all. In the realm of the mysterious, we find both terror and fascination, and in these shadows, we confront the depths of human nature and the uncharted territories of the universe. Thanks to each and every creeper out there who takes their time out of their day to listen to my horrifying stories. Remember to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And also be sure to check out my website for other chilling tales, delicious Halloween-inspired recipes, and amazingly horrifying merch. And fear not, for as you step back into the realm of the familiar, let the shivers down your spine remind you that life's greatest mysteries are the ones that keep us awake at night, beckoning us to peer into the abyss and challenging our boundaries of our understanding. Until next time, dear creepers, may your dreams be undisturbed, and may you find solace in the light of day. Good night, sweet dreams, if you dare.